Hello, everybody, and welcome to WTS 255. We're back after an extended holiday season, Christmas festive, whatchamacallit. My name's Danny Murray.
Whatchamacallit.
Was that Christmas thingy-majig?
Yeah, I'm the thingy-majig, Graham Merrigan.
Oh man, Mero, how are you?
Great, how are you?
I'm absolutely loving life. 2K22. Now,
2K22.
I'll leave you.
Y2K, remember that? Y2K. Year 2000.
Yeah, I do. I remember it. I'm old enough to remember it, sadly. Graham, I'll leave you to do the honours because our lovely guest is here with us straight away from the very get-go.
Our lovely, lovely guest is Irish Journalist of the Year. Yippee! Woohoo! Journalist for the Irish Examiner, the lovely Aoife Moore. How are you, Aoife?
Hello, thanks for having me back for my hat trick.
Your hat trick. Yeah. So do we officially, like every bit of media and every podcast you do now, is it officially Journalist of the Year, Aoife Moore?
Yep, Irish Journalist of the Year. I mean, I would prefer like Queen or something, but people really haven't been doing that, so it's just Irish Journalist of the Year.
I know, but I mean, like, as far as kind of titles go, I would be demanding that, like, anywhere I go, like, even if I'm just booking a restaurant or that, and I'll just be like, did you ask for my name? Irish Journalist of the Year, Aoife Moore. Starbucks, what? Hazelnut latte?
Yeah, well,
is it for Irish Journalist of the Year, Aoife Moore? That's me.
They can't spell, anytime I go into Starbucks, they can't spell my name properly anyway, so I might have better luck if I went done and said Irish Journalist of the Year.
I'd love to see what they have in your cup when you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell you what.
No harm if I went down and did that in Starbucks. I wouldn't blame them if they spat in
it. So you and Paul Hosford won Journalist of the Year. Were you buzzing with that, or was it?
Aye, it was mad. Like, we kind of felt that we would win Scoop of the Year for Golfgate. We kind of knew that there hadn't been anything as big in terms of like the outcomes for the politicians. But the Irish Journalist of the Year award doesn't have a shortlist. It's like an overall award that the judges decide themselves. And we were really shocked by that. We really didn't think we would get both of them. So after we won Scoop of the Year, because the award show was all pre-recorded, it was because of COVID, we couldn't actually have an award show. So it was all pre-recorded. So after we won Scoop of the Year, me and Paul were like phoning our mammies and like phoning people to say, oh, we won. And then Danny, our boss, was like, I think you should pay attention to the next award as well. And we had like, by this stage, we had like mentally checked out. And then they mentioned something about the Minister for Agriculture having to resign. And I was like, oh shit, we've won this as well.
No way.
Yeah, so it was great.
But Dan didn't have any knowledge of that, did he?
I think Danny knew. I think somebody had said to Danny beforehand, but he didn't tell us.
Oh.
So I think he knew, so that's why he was like filming us as they were saying it. But I was mad, just really didn't expect it. But everyone was so nice about it as well. And then everyone's been so good. So it's been great.
What did your mom say?
My mom doesn't pay that much attention, to be honest. Like, she was just like, oh, very good. Like, there is absolutely no chance of me ever getting above my station when it comes to my work, because my ma thinks my job is the most boring, ridiculous thing in the world. So, like, she's so supportive, but, like, she can't even listen to Morning Ireland for more than, like, 10 minutes because she's like, no, so boring, can't be bothered. So she's very supportive of me, but she can't be bothered with the news at all.
Right, okay. If Irish Journalist of the Year wasn't enough to win her over, surely the fact that you're now Bezos and getting shout outs from Chisty Moore has to have gone. She was very
excited about that. My mummy was very excited about the Chisty Moore thing. The fact that Chisty Moore knows who I am freaks me out. But my ma was absolutely buzzing. She was telling me. So she didn't. I don't know if she told many people I won Irish Journalist of the Year, but she's told half a dairy that Chisty Moore gave me a shout out. So that's where her priorities are.
So you were at Chisty Moore, and it was back home in Derry that he suitably dedicated to you on the night. Were you upped in giving it socks, or were you just being trying to be cool or.
I actually like.
No,
I
I can vouch for what she was actually like. Go on.
I think I was in fucking sorry cursing. I think I
You're
was in
allowed
pure,
on this one. We're not more in Ireland. You're all right.
I was in pure shock. Like I had a hold of Maro's arm the whole way through. Been like, what just happened? Actually, my stomach was in my throat. It was like, what is this? But no, it was great. It was amazing. I think it's one of them things I'll remember forever. The fact that Chisty Moore knows who I am is absolutely nuts. So I think I can die happy now.
The minute he said journalism, I just gave her the elbow, and then she was like,
Once he started talking about journalists, I turned to Mero and I was like, what did you do?
yeah. So he did what he said, Danny, was journalism in this country is great and stuff like that. And he says, I automatically think of Veronica Guerin, Nicola Tallant, Mick Clifford, and then he said the wonderful, great Aoife Moore, and she just there bawling.
Shut up.
And then
yes, there were some tears.
Eva's here this evening.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with shedding tears. I done the same when Jedward appeared in my inbox. So
amazing. Jedward messaged me as well once, and I was like, "This is it. I have reached the pinnacle."
They messaged me, and about 3
Such
months
nice
later,
boys.
oh, lovely, absolutely lovely. But they messaged me, and about 3 months later, we were in Virgin Studios together for a few hours, doing just a load of waffle.
Oh, sorry, was this you just happened to drop in that you're now a TV star? Like you couldn't just let me have my moment as Irish journalist of the year. I was like, oh, by the way, I also do stuff. I'm actually the star of beloved Virgin Media One show stolen from Channel 4 Gogglebox.
I mean, you're throwing around words of stolen there. But for the record, I will clarify. Any opportunity I have to bring up Gogglebox until Graham Merrigan has actually watched it, I will.
Well, I've watched it, if that makes you feel any better. I watch it all the time.
Thanks. The fact that you haven't saying you enjoyed my presence on it says a lot. So we'll move along swiftly.
How did they, Danny? Did they not reach out to Jedward on the Twitter pod, but then they message you on your private account?
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, they said that American lad doesn't do it for us, but your man there talking about Eurovision, that's what we're into. So, but they acted like they didn't know who I was. It was like, lads, we were literally DMing back and forth, and they just looked at me and I was like, you DM thousands of people, don't you? And then they looked at each other.
Yeah,
and
I think they do. I think they've got pretty active social media accounts.
Yeah, it's mad how much the Jedwards have grown up, though, isn't it? To be fair,
they're a credit to themselves, though. I think they're so nice. They seem very lovely boys because, like, they were a massive pain in the arse when they were in X Factor, but like they're quite sweet now.
They've got real like social consciousness now, don't they? And they're giving it sucks. Yeah. Didn't they post a contract or something that they got a One Direction?
Yeah, they had loads of criticism about the music industry and like how young people are used and stuff. I remember that.
And they hated Louis Walsh now.
Yeah.
But fair play to them.
Indeed.
What did a private message say to you, Eva?
You know, if something they were just being nice. They were like, "Oh, keep going, Aoife," or something like that.
And were you just kind of going, "Holy shit, Jedward," or just up their message?
But it was around that time where they were messaging everyone. They were like DMing everybody on Twitter, being like, "Jedward thinks you're great," sort of thing. So I don't feel very special. It's not Chisty Moore, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's mad the way pre-boosters and pre-vaccines, Jedward were the shot in the arm everyone needed. And that's about the peak of me this evening, lads. You take it away from here. That's me done.
That's the only lull we're getting out of Danny.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, so it's you're busy, Aoife. You've made time for us, which is very nice of you. But in general, you are fucking flat out at the moment.
Flat out, there's just a lot going on. Obviously, the doll's back now after Christmas, and then we'll have all of that kicking off. There's Stormont elections now in May, and I'm also attempting to write a book. So I have a lot going on. Just as well, I have nothing in my life other than my work, so I wouldn't get anything done.
Are you allowed to talk about the book, or is it still?
Aye.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Go on. Talk to us about the book.
How's the progress going?
For people who are not clued in, I am writing a book about the rise of modern Sinn Féin in Ireland, North and South. It's really interesting. Like, I'm learning a lot. I'm doing a lot of interviews. And even though obviously I come from the North, and I would have thought I had like a pretty good knowledge of Sinn Féin. Yeah, I am learning a lot. I haven't started writing it yet. I'm still in the interview stages, but it's good. I try not to think too much about it because no one puts more pressure on me than me, and I'm trying to cut myself a bit of slack, because if you thought about it too much, you wouldn't get anything done because it's such a big project.
So with
But
that in mind, when can I read it?
It'll be in bookshops. I think the aim is Halloween 2023, so everybody can buy it for their dad for Christmas.
So we'll have it summer 2023.
Yeah, of course. We'll get an exclusive preview. I assume.
Of course. Yeah, you'll be getting the manuscript.
Yeah, we'll get to syndicate a chapter each week or something for about a month. Will we? I assume that's how it's going to work. Like read exclusively by Merrow. Republicans will tune in for that alone, Graham. Let's be honest.
Absolutely, I'll do the audio version.
Merrow might fall out with me if I'm not nice enough about Sinn Féin.
Okay, we'll move on. Did you always have aspirations to write a book, Aoife?
I thought I would. I don't know. I always sort of felt that I would write a book. I was always good at English at school, and I always sort of felt I would write a book, but I never really thought about what I would write it about. And then in the last year before, I had actually mulled writing a book about Mary Lou, because I thought if there was the first female Taoiseach, if she becomes the first female Taoiseach, no one really knows anything about her. So I actually had kind of that in my mind when then Penguin came to me and said that they were looking for a book about Sinn Féin, which I thought would be a much more interesting project. And now we know that Shane Ross is actually writing a book about Mary Lou. Shane Ross is writing a book about Mary Lou. So the idea was stolen from me anyway. But he is he's I actually think it's due out this year. I think his book's due out this year. No, I'm just advertising other people's books, but I'm really sure that it is due out this year.
Jesus, I didn't hear anything about that. And it's fine because
he's on the Tonight Show nearly every second night, for God's sake.
He's good value though. He's quite funny, and he is a former minister, so he's good to have on when you're trying to get in the kind of intricacies of government. And he was in government with Fine Gael, so he knows them all really well, and he's also a bit of a loose cannon, so I think he's good TV as well.
I do feel though that he was crap as a minister, and now he's coming out on panel shows, and he's being he's listenable as a panelist.
He's what?
He's listenable.
Okay.
As a panelist, but is that not a word?
It would just go.
And you're kind of just feeling like you were a minister. I feel like you're gaslighting us here. You did all you could have done these changes. You didn't. What did he do? He reopened the Garda station.
He was the minister for sport. Remember there was that photograph of him in the football. I think it was the Aviva, and he had his fly was undone and his tie was hanging out the bottom of his fly.
Like every lad at their debs.
I have to say though, I read his book because that's the kind of cool person I am. He wrote a book called In Bed with the Blue Shirts about being in government with Fine Gael, and I actually really liked it. He's a really good writer. He's very good at he takes the piss out of himself quite a lot. The bit where he talks about that photograph, his assistant phoned him and was delete the photograph on Twitter. Your tie is hanging out of your fly. And she was in panic stations, and I was crying with laughter reading it. He's very good at taking the hand out of himself.
So the Garda station he got reopened in Step Aside.
Step Aside. That was his big constituency goal, wasn't it? That Step Aside Garda station reopened.
But he also claimed as well that he'd see John Delaney every Saturday on the South Side watching football matches. It just that didn't happen.
More chance of
but
seeing you in the PA game.
There is a type of independent person who gets elected by the Irish electorate, and they have that kind of unrelatable, eccentric kind of streak that Irish people seem to really love.
Yeah, exactly. Unrelatable. You need the nail on the head.
Yeah, he is very unrelatable. And I have a lot of time for Shane Ross, but he is unrelatable and he is very eccentric. I mean, there's nobody else like him at all, because I think there could only be one elected. There is something about that Irish people do have a great regard compared to other parliaments for independence, and it's a certain type of person I think that gets elected. And Shane Ross is one of those people.
I think you're 100% right. I don't think I've ever encountered an independent that his name or her name wouldn't be followed by, they're a bit of a character. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it is very much a kind of, I'm not, because what they're brilliant and what they understand better than anybody is everything is local. Doesn't matter what
Yeah.
the issue is, everything is local. And that's how they constantly keep getting back to the doll. But to
Yeah.
everybody outside of their constituency, the politest way to look at them is with a fucking raised eyebrow. But,
Yeah.
you know,
there definitely is something in that, I think. And like, as you say, they keep getting returned. It's rare enough that they only get one term. You know, they get returned quite a lot.
yeah.
But it's because Ireland's politics, the politics in the Republic is very local. You know where your TD lives. You know, you'd probably drink in the same pub as them for a lot of people. So, or you would have grown up with them, or they would have been on the council before.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best things about Irish politics is that, you know, Michael D. Higgins is like queuing for an ATM, and the Taoiseach, you know, stands and talks to people at funerals. You know, that kind of way. I think that's the best thing about it. I would hate that if they got so removed from the people, because I think Leinster House is already a bit removed from what ordinary people and their lives are like. So I think I don't want it to get any worse.
What are the bad things then about it?
About Leinster House?
Just about politics, I suppose. You know what you were saying there
It's
about.
like all the obvious stuff. Like there's like Leinster House is the whitest place on earth. You know, it doesn't reflect Irish society. Like the only person of colour in it all is Leo Varadkar. I'm not even sure, have we ever had a disabled TD? I don't think so.
No, we had a
There's not-
senator, Crowley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there's not enough young people, there's not enough women. You know, it's not, and like this isn't an Irish problem. You know, it's the same in parliaments in most of Europe, apart from, you know, the good countries like Scandinavia. But yeah, it just doesn't look enough like Ireland, and we're never going to reflect society if the politicians don't look like society. But I would also argue that I know they get paid an awful lot of money, but it is a totally thankless job. It's not something I think I could do. Women especially get a really hard time with it. And if you don't live in Dublin, you know, it's 3 days a week. It's a lot of driving, and you're living in a hotel 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. What does that do for families? What does that do for women who want to have children? Like Holly Cairns, I think, lives the furthest. And she's like 5 hours from Dublin because she's in like west Cork. And she has to drive 10 hours a week and live in a hotel for 3 days. Like, yeah, she gets paid a lot of money, but that's no life.
No, it is not like.
We need, I think,
He's an absolutely brilliant politician.
I was
by the
going to
way.
say, we need about 15 Holly Cairns in the doll.
Yeah, we could do
Like-
a lot more Holly Cairnses.
Cairns is, we'll have to actually ask her what is the correct plural. It's like stadium and stadia, is it?
Yeah, Stadia, I hate that.
Just
I hate
we might
when
take,
Stadia
just, take,
comes up.
just take the S off it and just have her as a Holly Cairn.
Yeah.
It's like
You know-
octopus, octopi, Holly Cairn. I don't.
Aye, Holly Cairn.
Do you know, like I think Holly Cairns has got great publicity and she's done really. She's very outspoken and she's been brilliant. But when you look at the polls and you see the Social Democrats, they don't seem to be progressing at all. Like in the polls,
They kind of stagnate around 6%.
Yeah.
For a lot of it, and it's strange because I really believe that they've 6 TDs and every single one of them is a really good performer in the doll. You wouldn't look at, and this is the thing with smaller parties, is that you can't really have a dud because it's very obvious when you do. You know, there's duds in Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin, but the smaller the parties, you know, the duds are less likely to get elected. But I think the thing with Social Democrats is I don't know, this is me completely guessing, but I would say that they do seem to be a very kind of Dublin, Wicklow, Kildare type party. They haven't really like branched out.
Yeah.
Yeah, further afield. And then I think as well that like people automatically tie them to the Labour Party, even though, you know, the Social Democrats are actually more popular than the Labour Party. I think they reflect Ireland much more than the Labour Party, but I do think there's this kind of notion with certain Irish people that they're kind of the same thing, and I think the media does perpetuate that. Like every single press conference, like start a year press conference, start a Christmas press conference, thanking annual conference, one journalist will always ask Catherine Murphy and Roisin Shortall when he's going to join up with the Labour Party. And it is so, like, they laugh when it's asked because it's like, stop asking this question. Like, it doesn't benefit anybody. They're their own party. And I think they have done incredibly well to go from starting a party out of nowhere, go from 2 TDs to 6 TDs. And then people are still banging on about the Labour Party. So I can understand why it must be frustrating for them. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see in the next election because a lot of the votes, as if the polls are currently anything to go off, we know that Sinn Féin are going to do incredibly well. But I think the smaller parties that people would transfer to, like the Social Democrats, are going to suffer a bit. Because if Sinn Féin run 2 candidates or 3 candidates in some constituencies, them transfers just aren't going to be there for the Social Democrats and Labour and People for Profit. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'm not sure about maybe I think as well people are really looking for radical change, and maybe they feel like that the Social Democrats don't offer that at the minute.
In terms of COVID over the last 2+ years, whatever, we're coming up to 2 years in March. Has it been hard to work, hard to report? I know we touched on the Golfgate story, which was absolutely excellent reporting, but has it been hard to seek accountability from those in power when those in power never wished of running the country while through a pandemic? It's once in a situation.
It is hard. Like, even practically, it's hard. Press conferences have been limited. When we've had limited numbers of press allowed, then it means you get limited questions because there's not enough time, and not everybody can attend. And then there's different things, like I was saying the other day to somebody, actually, if a politician doesn't want to answer the phone, they don't have to. And because we've all been at home, they can avoid your calls all they want. It's different when you're standing outside the canteen and you corner them and they can't get away from you. So that was something that was lost in COVID. The best stories are the stories that you hear. Somebody passes you in the corner and says, "Here, did you hear this?" But you can't whisper when you're wearing a mask and you're 6 feet away from somebody. You know what I mean? So that kind of notion of hearing something as a bit of gossip and then reporting on it once you dig into the story, that all got a bit harder. But I think the Irish media, especially in the last year, has really adapted. I think we've seen some absolutely excellent journalism, especially from younger Irish journalists in the last year. So I think it's definitely been a learning curve, and it's not something I am very keen to keep going. But it's like everybody else. Everybody had to adapt. Nobody wanted to be in COVID-19, like sitting on your sofa watching the late drinking wine and crying for a year. That's all I did in lockdown. Like, so I imagine everyone else is the same.
Oh God, I find that concept crazy that you'd be like walking down the corridor, you might see a TD and you might hear a bit of gossip on the corridor, and then that's your lead potentially into a story. That's just, I've never thought of it like that. That's mad.
That's where the best stories come from. It's never from a press release. It's from somebody saying, "Oh, did you hear this?" And it mightn't be a TD, it might be a staff member, it might be one of the ushers or security men in Leinster House. You hear stuff everywhere, like, but that definitely, Leinster House was like a ghost town for a year. So that was definitely harder. But as I say, everybody adapts. And I would also say that we used to complain during lockdown that because all the politicians were stuck in their houses, they were all behaving themselves.
Yeah.
So there was less gossip to write about.
There's still always a story out there, though, when Golfgate, which Irish Journalist of the Year you got, and Scoop of the Year. Am I saying that right? Am I saying that right? I am. Yeah, okay. I'm going to keep milking that as much as I can in this interview. Just, yeah. But the Golfgate story, I think, like, and I know you've probably talked about it, that you're probably sick about talking to it, or sick of
But she's sick
about
of it because she has imposter syndrome that we're trying to develop out of her.
but
I think that's natural, though, isn't it? Everybody has a bit of imposter syndrome. Everybody's waiting for the hand on their shoulder.
Is it not modesty, though?
I think a lot of it is the kind of background I come from, and like people like me aren't supposed to be Irish journalists of the year.
When you say that,
Well, hold on, your cousin's
yeah.
already in court, so he's a sensational footballer. So it's in the family, like.
I know, but I'm not playing football.
Yeah, but you're Irish Journalist of the Year. Thank you.
But yeah, I do think it is. A lot of it comes from that kind of working class thing. Is like you need to be twice as good, and that also being a woman and being young. Part of it as well. You have to be twice as good to get any recognition.
Do you sometimes, and I'm maybe not phrasing this question properly, like, and like in my opinion, you're one of the best journalists in the country. So I don't want this question to come across that I'm one of the dickheads on Twitter saying the fuck are you doing kind of thing. But like, do you sometimes in your own head question your seat at the table?
Oh yeah, all the time. You know, like people asking me or saying stuff. You know, people say like really lovely things about my work, and then you don't really take any in of the good, but you take in a lot of the negative. And also, I hold myself to like this insane standard. So, like immediately after Golfgate came out, and you know there were all the resignations and all the hoo-ha, I said to Paul, like on the Monday, I was like, "Oh shit, what if we've peaked?" It's like we've peaked too early now. I was like, we've done something too good too fast, and then you're always chasing the next thing because not only do you think, oh, I need to get the next thing, but you start thinking like, what if people say, oh, she hasn't done anything since Golfgate? So you're always trying, and you're only at war with yourself. Like no one else is saying this to me, like, but it's all in your own head. And I think like you're always trying to prove yourself, and it's a bit of like a competitive thing as well. You know, like after the story about Marion Gate came out, Phil Bryan, who I argue probably breaks the most stories out of anyone in Irish journalism, did the Marion Gate story. I didn't speak for like an hour because I was so furious that I didn't get that story. I was so annoyed at myself, even though I didn't know anything about it and I couldn't have got it. But that's the sort of way that I am. Like I just constantly have to be on to the next thing, and that's why the book is so daunting, because I really want the book to be good, because no one holds me to a higher standard than I do myself, and always have done. I'm very hard on myself.
Danny, it's worth noting as well, Danny, that not only did Aoife get a shout out by Chisty Moore last Monday, but he has included Golfgate in his song Delirium Tremens, where he mentions a passage about playing golf with Phil Hogan, Seamus Hunt.
Yeah, immortalised in song, like
immortalised in song, like. But it's interesting because when me and Danny spoke to Chisty Moore on the podcast a couple of years ago, we asked him, when did you kind of like, this man is performing 60 years, and we asked him, when did you feel like you were good and you were like important to people, and he said 2008. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but then like, but the other side of it is, too, like, I won Irish Journalist of the Year, so am I going to like run around now believing my own bullshit? Like,
yeah, that's exactly.
We won.
You sound like your mom now. You sound like Lorraine now.
Hang on. We won. And when I say we won Podcast of the Year, it was a very, very, very small website.
Was the judging panel your two mass?
Right. If it was, we wouldn't have won. My man would have voted for somebody else. Right. I'm still living off that.
You should.
So like that's a nothing. Do you know what I mean? And yet here you are with a 2 Scoop of the Year and that, and you're still like. And in one sense, it's admirable in terms of like you're saying it's, I can't rest on that. It's on to the next thing. It's to find like that hunger is deadly, but like, Jesus, did you at least pour like a massive glass of wine to be like, I'm fucking deadly for at least 5 minutes? Like,
I didn't sober up. The awards were on the Thursday night. I don't think I sobered up to the Tuesday.
Lovely.
I was never ever fear that I know how to have a good time.
Lovely.
I went on Claire Byrne the next day, and I was not an energetic contributor to that program.
When that story's breaking, like, are you like, and the information before it's gone to print, and the information's coming to you and Paul, are you kind of just like, What the fuck? He's like high-fiving each other thinking,
Yeah, no, not at all, because the panic just sets in. You're so stressed about someone else getting the story. You're so stressed that you've messed something up in the story, that there's a detail you haven't checked. Like, Paul at one point said to me, "If I think they're going to have to resign." And I was like, I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't even considered the outcomes because I was so far deep in the crossing every T and dotting every I and making sure we had it right, because we were accusing people of something.
did you have to go to the lead
And
team and the examiner as well, like, to get clearance?
everything like that has to be legal. We have most newspapers have a solicitor on staff who reads the paper before it goes out, because you have to be incredibly careful. We know what the defamation laws are like in Ireland as well, so you have to be really, really careful. Because it's also not me and Paul that are paying the money. If the examiner is sued, it's the examiner that's paying it. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and you do live on your nerves. And but we really got to enjoy Golfgate, and we got, like, not the actual, I don't like the thought of people losing their jobs, but people were very good to us. People were very congratulatory, especially other journalists. I think they were pleased it was two young journalists, and kind of people who weren't as well known.
Yeah, I
They
think
got
it
it,
was
so
great as
people were
well.
great.
It was great as well that it was the Examiner, because the Examiner over the last sort of 3 years or whatever has kind of it's become, like, I know the joke used to be kind of like the Cork Examiner, and it still is the Cork Examiner kind of thing, but it's become, I think, one of the heavyweights now in terms of that, and it is young journalists that are driving that.
Yeah, and
But-
like the Examiner has always had a reputation of being the kind of the paper with like a social conscience. And that's what really attracted me to it. And I would also say, like, the biggest change is that they hired an editor who is really young to be an editor. Tom Fitzpatrick he's somewhere around 40, which is incredibly young for a national newspaper editor. He's incredibly interested in climate change, social issues. He leads from the front, and they have hired a really diverse mix of people. Because that's what I said about politics, is exactly how I feel about politics is how I feel about journalism, is that we can't all look the same and sound the same, because we are not going to reflect society. And the Examiner, we are a miscellaneous bunch. But it works for us, even in the politics team. We're gender split, so there's myself and Elaine Loughlin, and then Danny, the political editor, and Paul Hosford, and we all come from incredibly different backgrounds. Like me and Elaine would have had completely different upbringings, same as Paul and Danny, completely different upbringings. But we all have our own specialist kind of subjects. We only have our niche kind of areas that we look at, and I think that's why it works, because it's a good spread, and that goes across the news desk and stuff as well. We have fellas on there who are Cork to their bones, everything that happens in Cork, and then we have young female journalists who are 21, 22 doing investigations on the trans healthcare and stuff like that. So, like, I think journalism and politics are only better when there's a diversity of people and
Absolutely.
in the offices.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I think, like, one of the things you mentioned earlier on, talking about kind of politicians, whatever, was that the word accountability came up. And I think when you said about Golfgate there, and you're like, I don't like to think about people losing their jobs. I don't think that's what people celebrated, though. But it was just nice to have that moment of accountability, because like, if you look at what's going on now,
accountability in Irish politics is lacking. Like,
I know, yeah, and that's it. But I think if you look at what's going on across the pond at the minute, and I know, like, as we're recording this, maybe walking to his impending doom, because the report is being handed in, hasn't it, as of this evening?
He won't be, will he?
Well, it depends.
Honest to God, lads, like, he's made a Teflon. Like, how many children is she going to have to pop out so they distract the entire nation that this fella is a bumbling idiot?
Like,
I read a bio about him recently.
It's not that as well, right? Because I think people always complain about there's no accountability in Irish politics, and there is a serious lack of it. But when you look at the swiftness of what happened after Golfgate,
exactly,
and then you look across the Downing Street, this is the old empire. These people once ran the world, and they had more parties in lockdown than I went in Freshers Week when I was a student. Like, the actual disrespect for the NHS, which is easily, hands down, the greatest thing that the United Kingdom has ever produced, is the NHS, and the absolute disrespect for people and their loved ones in the pandemic is the thing that bothers people the most, and I actually don't know if the Conservatives will come back from this.
I know. I hope
the only reason that they're not further down the polls is because people have no time for the British Labour Party either.
Well, but it's baffling to me that, like, when you think back to a year ago or maybe a little bit less than a year ago, I can't remember, when the Scottish CMO or the equivalent had to resign for going to her private holiday home with her own family because it broke the rules that were in place at that time. And here's Boris and Co. seemingly on their 17th life, like it's a fucking computer game, and they just keep leveling up.
It literally is their 17th life, right?
It's incredible how he's still going. And as I said, by the time this goes out, maybe he won't be. But
the bio that I read of just about the Aoife's comment there about his partner having another child for the distraction, I read a pretty up-to-date article about him, and it was kind of a retrospect looking at him. And the author of the article didn't know factually how many kids he had.
But he won't admit it, will he? He won't.
It's up for debate. It is up for debate. He's never confirmed.
The author of the article said, as the best of my knowledge, he has 7 kids.
But it's not that, what people's like politicians' personal lives is really none of my concern. I think Ireland and Irish journalism is better for the fact that we don't talk about people's kids, we don't talk about people's wives. Absolutely. But I would say that a man who neglects his responsibilities to his children is not a man that should be running the country in a pandemic or any other thing.
It's also a man who was sacked from his job in the newspaper for lying.
Yeah.
And
he was sued.
You know, and like he's being caught on the hook, I don't know how many times at this sort of stuff. And so, like that, when it comes to things and people sort of saying, well, surely if there's accusations out there about you being up to all sorts, and, you know, I just don't know how. I completely agree with your point around, like, you know, like politicians are entitled to private lives. 1,000,000%. I'm still baffled about the whole thing of, like, that in Ireland you can look up the politician's actual home address. I just think it's crazy. But there's something about Boris where I'm like, fuck it, how is he still going?
But like,
crazy.
Is it
but
fair?
It was kind of that, like, swift kind of descent into that kind of toxic nationalism as well around Brexit, and playing on people's fears about immigration. And, you know, Boris kind of represents proper Englishness, you know, privately educated. His dad was privately educated and grew up in an incredibly wealthy family. And, like, the best about it is, like, there was northern mining towns who voted for the Conservatives in that election and voted for Boris. So something is deeply wrong, because these are people who are actively voting against their own interests. The north of England has been totally neglected by the Conservative government, successive Conservative governments. So I do think that Brexit and everything around it have kind of poisoned their kind of collective national mentality away. And, like, you're also seeing that, like, with Priti Patel, like the Home Secretary, and the kind of policy she's bringing in. It's so inward looking. It's so Little Britain, you know, in a time where countries like Ireland and Canada and Germany are trying to, you know, become more global and open their doors, and everyone's trying to be a bit more progressive. America under Trump, and then sorry, does that go off?
Right.
America under Trump and Britain under Boris seems to have gone backwards. And I think it is interesting that these are two former superpowers, two former huge superpowers, and they've decided to regress while smaller countries are going out of their way to do anything but not be like America and Britain. It's definitely a step change.
It is, and like 100%. When we look at stuff like that, and I suppose the topic there was about accountability and Boris and stuff like that, and Priti Patel. Closer to home, like, is COVID on his last life? Is, like, in terms of what's going on there, is it? I'm not asking is it comparable as such, but sometimes you do find that people.
There are certain people who are too big to fail, and I think Fine Gael have decided that Simon Coveney is too big to fail. Simon Coveney is Mr. Brexit. I would say, for all of his missteps in the last year, there couldn't have been a better foreign affairs minister during Brexit. He was incredibly dedicated to the job. He knows everything inside out. He has a great relationship in Europe with the people who matter. He's not one, to fly off the handle. And you must have the patience of a saint to try and deal with the Britain's Brexit negotiators. They're trying to rearrange a deal that they organised. It must be so frustrating. Like, if that was me, I'd be getting off my head. So I do think they have decided he is too big to fail. I would say he's gotten very sloppy in the last year. This is now the third time he's going to be in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee trying to answer for what he did. I think he did get a bit complacent. I think not calling for an investigation into the Champagne Party at the time was a huge mistake. What he also seems to have an issue with is not dealing with things properly in the press when they happen. This is also a Sinn Féin tactic, so I don't know how pleased he would be about having that in common with him, but leaving things to the last possible minute that you can reply, or making out that something isn't a big deal when people are clearly upset. It's not good press strategy, but it's something I've noticed quite a bit with Simon Coveney. Remember that famous interview you had with Brian Dobson about the Zapone issue, and he said, "Don't be trying to make this into a story." That to a journalist, is like a red rag to a bull. So I do think he maybe got a bit, I don't want to say cocky, but a bit complacent in that he knew he was very important. He's very important to Ireland when it comes to foreign affairs and Brexit. And he just took his eye off the ball when it came to, everything else, where it was appointing Catherine Zapone. He obviously never considered what it looked like. And then obviously with Champagne Gate as well, has been a disaster for him. Even after Zapone thing, deleting messages and saying he was doing it for memory and then he's doing it for security, and no one believed him. It came off as really sloppy.
The memory one was hilarious.
The memory thing was terrible.
Then he said, do you remember then he said he was hacked?
Yeah.
Then that would have been a security issue, and he said, "Oh no, I wasn't hacked."
That's what I mean. Like when you look at the say, I'm just using Twitter now as a discussion point. When you look at the people that I follow that follow politics, and a lot of people's attention is like taking the piss out of the Conservative Party in Britain for doing X, Y, and Z. And whilst I agree, I'm kind of going, but like, look closer to home. Look at Coveney. That hacking thing. What he said about his phone was just ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
And then, like what you're saying there about, you think Fine Gael probably think he's almost too big of a personality to just punish, so to speak. Like, even look at Leo Varadkar about, like, he's still under criminal investigation. You know, and we're pointing fingers at the British Conservative Party when the Irish Conservative Party are doing probably the exact same, not repeatedly like Boris is on his 17th life. Do you know that way? But it's just like, come on, like, lads, we need more accountability here. I'm not like, I just think with the dialogue on Twitter about people constantly slagging the British Conservative Party, I think we just need to look closer to home for accountability. Yeah, we had people owning up post Golfgate, owning up after an extended period of, it wasn't my fault type of thing. Seamus Wolf he's still doing what he was doing. And Leo Varadkar, as I said, on the criminal investigation, I just think that's crazy. Like if a person in opposition to Leo Varadkar was in a criminal investigation while being the leader of the country or the second in command, of course he'd be looking for him to step down until the criminal investigation had finished.
I would also make the point that in the last government, when he was Taoiseach, Denis Naughton had to stand down over the broadband issue because the optics were so bad. Leo Varadkar made the point that the optics didn't look good and his position was untenable. I can't imagine what he thinks of the optics have been under criminal investigation. So the point is often made to me by Fianna Fáilers and Fine Gaelers that if this was anyone else other than Leo Varadkar, he would not be in the job. We are now actually staring down the barrel. I don't know how long this investigation is going to go on for, but we are now staring down the barrel of the fact that he's supposed to become the Taoiseach again in December. What if the guards haven't decided that they're done yet? You know what I mean? Like, what happens then? So I've spoken to Fine Gael ministers and TDs and I've asked them, and they all seem incredibly confident that nothing's going to come out of this, but they really want it to be finished up really soon. Like they feel like it's been going on for a long time. But I would also say that the guards are in a really unenviable position because they need to be seen to be turning over every stone. That there was no favoritism, there was no any outside meddling. They need to really make sure that they have looked at everything. So I think the guards are in a really tough spot as well because people are always going to complain no matter what the outcome is. You know, I've seen the visceral kind of feelings there is towards politicians, and Leo Varadkar gets some horrendous abuse. I even noticed that there's certain politicians that if you write a story about them or their quotes or something, your mentions are immediately flooded with like horrible abuse. You know, Leo Varadkar is one of them. Mary Lou McDonald is another. So it's yeah, I think it's absolutely mad that the Taoiseach is still under criminal investigation, and he's still the Taoiseach.
Yeah, as you said, they're gonna have to. I just can't. I just can't picture a world where a sitting Taoiseach is under a criminal investigation and has been for, at that point, what will be well over a year. I also really want somebody to launch a criminal investigation into Fianna Fáil ruining Wordle yesterday. Like, can we have nothing anymore? I don't know who's on their social media team, but whoever did that, they ruined it for me.
But that's the thing. That's the thing with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. What I find on social media, when they try to jump on something that's going trendy, they get absolute slaughtered. And it's kind of like, who is running their account? Just let us have something.
Just let us have that cute, innocent game. That's all it was.
Politics doesn't have to be cool and edgy and funny and Simpsons memes. You know what I mean? Like, you don't, if that's not what you're about, it's not what you're about. You don't, because when you try and do it and it doesn't work, it's just not, it doesn't come off the same. Like, imagine like the Social Democrats like tweeting like Simpsons memes or something. Like, it's not, that's not the audience for you guys. Like, don't be doing that. Like, I can understand Ogre Sinn Féin or whatever you think of it, but they really understand the social media side of it. They understand the memes and all that, and like, that's fair enough, right? That's their thing. But I kind of despair at times with some of the other parties of their social media, because it's like, you don't have to be cool and edgy. People just want like tangible outcomes in their life and good policies. Like, don't be worrying about the Simpsons memes.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Like, leave that sort of stuff to the Lidl and Domino's accounts who do a great job of it. Can you lads just concentrate on doing what you're actually supposed to be doing? Not ruining Wordle, solving a housing crisis. That'd be fantastic.
Do either of you see a general election happening before it's supposed to happen?
No.
Nobody wants it.
I just feel like nobody wants it.
And they're not going to.
Leo Varadkar is dying to be Taoiseach again. Fianna Fáil don't have anyone to replace Micheál Martin, even if they wanted to. So I think they'd be quite happy to kind of batter on now until what, 2024, 2025?
Yeah, I think so as well. I just can't see. Neither one of those two big parties want to tear it down because they'll be handing an open net to Sinn Féin at the moment. And that's the last thing they want to do.
Yeah. And it's mad because the likes of the old schoolers in Fianna Fáil are that I've seen. I've seen Jim O'Callaghan, Eamon O'Queeve, Willie O'D. The more stuff time goes on, they're kind of more open. I think they're just following the polls, and they're more open now to a working government in the next government, say with Sinn Féin. So it will be funny to see see if Mary Lou will be the first lady Taoiseach, because I think she.
Sorry, did you quantum leap here from 1950? First lady Taoiseach.
I didn't know. First woman. I don't know why I said lady. I don't know why I said lady.
Oh God, what next? Lady Taoiseach? There'll be lady fireman, lady doctor,
Lady McDonald. Oh God!
I flew to London the other day. It was a lady pilot. Can you believe that?
Oh God!
Jesus.
Is
Oh
not
my
what I
god.
meant. Use absolute tramps.
Um, I think actually, I think that it's quite strange when you're watching the polls because the Sinn Féin seem to be on kind of an upward trajectory, and even though I would say Sinn Féin are incredibly, I don't think accident prone, gaff prone. I think a lot of the time, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael don't even have to do anything because Sinn Féin walk into rakes all the time, totally avoidable stuff.
Talk about
Um,
Simpsons memes.
I know,
Right,
they're
yeah.
like sideshow Bob, just walking in the rakes all the time. They have got a bit better. They have like a lot more streamlined in the way that they carry themselves. But yeah, it'll be really interesting now to see because realistically, the pandemic's nowhere near over, but we're not in the same situation we were last year, and everything is going to come back to housing. Housing
Yeah.
is the main issue. There is nothing else that people vote on now other than housing, and it seems that there is no one biting at Owen O'Brien's heels. There's no one who is impressing people more, and I think Sinn Féin know that. I think Owen could do and say whatever he wants now in the next couple of years because he knows that he's going nowhere in that role, and Sinn Féin know that too. I'd say he's treated like a wee golden egg in that place because that's what's going to win the election for them, because I don't believe that people are seeing tangible outcomes in housing from Dara O'Brien, and that's all that people really care about at the minute.
You're saying about the gaffs there. They have responded okay to the gaffs though, haven't they? Like the Paddy Houlihan thing, I thought they handled very well.
But I would also say they obviously did not research Paddy Houlihan before he joined.
That was the issue there.
The,
Yeah.
That was
the
the issue
party,
there.
because the issue was a lot of people when the Paddy Houlihan thing happened said, "Yeah, of course that happened."
Yeah, exactly. I was one of them.
He wasn't vetted. I know for a fact that elected officials in Sinn Féin told the party leadership that he was not a very good candidate and it was something that he would need to watch. But, there is a big draw in technically celebrity candidates or whatever. I would also say that their most recent gaffe was about Jerry Adams and the Christmas card was not handled properly. I think when it comes to legacy issues and the history of the IRA, they need to get on a better page because they are all over the shop. You're either sorry or you're not.
Yeah.
And the way they deal with it at the minute is not very professional and it is not very respectful. I think a lot of the time to victims of IRA violence. So stuff like that, they would need to get on the same page. You're either, like as I say, you're either sorry or you're not. I think this kind of mealy-mouthed, it's only a joke type stuff when things like this happen. We saw it in an election too with David Cullinane, shouting what he shouted, and then saying, it was only a joke and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Desi Ellis as well.
It's not funny, and it's very hurtful. And if we are looking, as we probably are at Sinn Féin in government in Dublin, this is the sort of stuff that's going to haunt them. Because there are a lot of victims who feel incredibly hard done by it, and so they should. So they would need to get a better strategy, I think, for legacy. I've thought this for a long time. When it comes to legacy issues, they haven't really decided on what their line is, and it's only going to get worse as they get more popular.
What did you think of their change of stance in the Special Criminal Court?
I thought it was cynical politics. I thought, and I said as much to Mary Lou, I said that it very much looks from the outside that you don't want to have to argue about the Special Criminal Court coming in to the next election with Fine Gael, because it's a stick that Fine Gael can use to beat Sinn Féin with, because it harks back to the time where Sinn Féin were inextricably linked to the IRA, and members of the IRA were up in front of the Special Criminal Court. So Fine Gael can use that, and their Fine Gael can use Sinn Féin's objection to the Special Criminal Court to remind people where Sinn Féin came from. So they decided to go against the United Nations and Amnesty International and the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. If you talk to any solicitor in Dublin, they will tell you that the Special Criminal Court is the most human rights adverse thing that you can think of. And Sinn Féin decided they were going to change their stance on it because, to me, it very much appeared that they didn't want to row about Fine Gael.
Makes no
with
sense.
Fine Gael about it. And it's I just found it incredibly cynical. I think I am incredibly proud to be Irish, but one of the biggest things that embarrasses me about being Irish is the Special Criminal Court. It is something that should have been away 20, 30 years ago if it ever should have existed in the first place. It is not in any way conducive to people's human rights.
Yeah.
And there are other ways, and they do it in other countries with gangland, with terrorism, with those kinds of cases. We do not have to do it this way. Juryless trials are not the way to do it.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, it just didn't make sense. Like you listed the Amnesty, Civil Liberties, all the organisations you mentioned, and it's like you were spouting that in previous general elections in your support, and now 2021 you're like going against that. It just, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think Sinn Féin Sinn Féin want to separate themselves from their history with the Provisional IRA, which is totally understandable. But I don't think other people's human rights should be thrown under the bus in order for you to do that. And it is now actually the only party in the Republic, as far as I know, along with People Before Profit, the only two parties who are openly against the Special Criminal Court is the Green Party and People Before Profit.
Yeah.
Bloody Sunday 50 is coming up this weekend. Talk to us a bit about that and what's happening in Derry.
So it's 50 years this Sunday since Bloody Sunday in 1972, when 13 men were killed outright and another man died later from his injuries. I say men, a lot of them were boys, a lot of them were still teenagers, children. So this is the 50th anniversary. There's an entire week's worth of programme going out. You know, there's talks. We do this every year. The Bloody Sunday Trust organises this every year, but this is the biggest one, obviously, because it's 50 years. You know, there's premieres, documentaries, there's conferences. Damien Dempsey is playing a concert. So there's a lot on. It's all about, the theme is One World, One Struggle. So there's a big international element of people coming in from other areas of conflict around the world to talk about their experiences, which was always a kind of big thing that the Bloody Sunday families did. They often would have people from Colombia or wherever else to come over and talk. So that's a big part of it. It will be quite tough. I actually think that this Sunday kind of marks like a finality to it. This has gone on since 72. You know, we had the Savile inquiry in 98, and then even up until last year, the families were still fighting to get any of the soldiers in front of a court, in front of a judge. We know that that's not going to happen, and we also know that the British government are planning on an amnesty in regards to the troubles in Northern Ireland. So I do think this will be the biggest one in Derry, the biggest event that we've had, but I think it will be the last. I don't think we'll ever see anything as big. The march might still go on, because the march has went on every year since Bloody Sunday, but I don't think we'll see anything more like this. And it's sad in a way, but people are getting old, you know, and like my auntie Eileen, who died a few years ago, she was the last Bloody Sunday widow, the last surviving Bloody Sunday widow. So all the widows are now dead, and the children of the men who were murdered are in their 60s. So there is a finality date, but again, I'm looking forward to it. I think the Bloody Sunday families, the Bloody Sunday Trust, the Bloody Sunday campaign is one of Derry's proudest achievements. I think our wee town decided that we were not going to lie down and take this, and made the British government maybe not atone for what they did, but admit to what they did, and it's a lot more than other people in the North get.
Absolutely, yeah. And not only that, wasn't it Cameron that apologised?
David Cameron said it was unjustified and unjustifiable is how the British Prime Minister described the actions of the British Army on Bloody Sunday, and I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's probably a modest way of putting it as well, considering what we know about the day itself. But yeah, it's something I'm incredibly proud of. I think most Derry people are incredibly proud of the Bloody Sunday Justice campaign, because it has been an open wound in Derry for a long time. The legacy of Bloody Sunday stretches over generations. So yeah, I think this is kind of the culmination of it now, but it will be hard. But I think in some ways it'll be a type of closure for some of the families as well. Because as we know, I think we all kind of know that we're not going to see any soldiers prosecuted. No. So this is kind of a type of closure as well.
I thought it was nuts when I read that Boris Johnson was putting through that amnesty thing. Just like,
I wasn't surprised. They had tried everything and anything.
It's real national, like you were saying previously in the conversation. It's real a decision based on stoked up masculinity, aggression over Brexit and nationalism.
I've always thought this as well, that like I remember always thinking to myself, right, it's the paratroopers came on Bloody Sunday and murdered all around them. Boys, 17-year-old boys and men, shot them in the back. And the British government and it felt to me at the time, a lot of the British public backed them, to the health back the soldiers. And even as a child, I always thought, like as an Irish person, like when I think of like the defence forces, that if one of our defence forces, or even just one of them, was over in wherever they are, in the Lebanon or whatever, and did that, I wouldn't want them in the defence forces, because I would think, well, you don't represent me. I don't want you representing me. It was always a very alien thing to me, but you are right. It's a kind of nationalistic type of mindset that I just don't have. Because for me, they're supposed to represent you. And I always, even when you're saying it to people, it's like Bloody Sunday was done in your name. It was done in the name of the people in England, because the British Army were to represent them in the north. So yeah, it's a very nationalistic thing. But I would also say that like Boris Johnson and the Conservative government have not only went out of their way to protect soldiers, they have thrown victims of IRA and loyalist violence under the bus.
Yeah.
And basically told them, well, we want to protect the soldiers at all costs, so we're going to protect the paramilitaries as well. And that is the most bizarre. Like if you had told me this 20 years ago, you never would have believed it, that the British government would be going out of their way to protect paramilitaries, as well as the British Army.
There's a weird thing that happens with identity politics around kind of the fetishization of military and armed forces.
Yeah. And you always said that, Danny.
It baffles me. You see it in America with the protect our troops or support our troops kind of thing, and you see it in Britain as well, and stuff like this where it's. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around it.
I can't relate to it. I can't relate to it either. I think maybe we just come from a very different country and we have a very different mindset when it comes to these things. But it is an intolerable cruelty that the British government have foisted on us. But it is not the first intolerable cruelty, and I don't think it'll be the last.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that kind of imperial identity, that kind of whole thing of like we were an empire, and the arrogance.
Yeah, it's back to the Little Britain thing now. They're all inward looking.
Yeah,
and even like they thought they were going to solve the pandemic on their own.
Yeah,
like what kind of brainworms does being an empire or being a superpower give you, that you think this once in a lifetime pandemic is going to be solved by you and you alone? It's a very Donald Trump way of thinking, and you notice it as well in England, and it's sad because it is always the most vulnerable communities that pay the price. And we will see the wealth inequality in America and in the UK just gets wider and wider. Meanwhile,
one of their princes with magic blood is facing all sorts of allegations and potential civil charges because the folks across the water aren't having the best time at the minute. When you think about it, they've got Boris
And then they always had, obviously, the royal family is that kind of, that pride. And there was never really anything. There was different scandals, but never anything of this magnitude. So yeah, they're definitely going through it, lads.
Yeah.
This is it.
Imagine though, like that member of the royal family suing. He's now taking a civil case, isn't he?
He is.
So I think he is. I mean, listen, the man went on that BBC and did that BBC interview against, as what I'm told, the wishes of the royal family, and thought he could charm his way out of these allegations. And it was truly, like, if you made that sketch up, people wouldn't put it on the TV because they'd be like, no, that's way too unrealistic. And the maddest thing I remember about it?
Pizza Express?
When he said he was in the Pizza Express in Woking, the thing I remember most is that the date he gave was my birthday.
No way.
The 10th of March. The 10th of March 2003 or something, so that would have been my 12th birthday. And I was like, the thing I always remember the most.
No way.
Jesus, yeah. A Pizza Express, and he is physically unable to sweat. Little weirdo.
I'd say he's sweating now anyway.
Big time, yeah. But he's allowed antiperspirant on to cover it up.
The crown should be interesting when it gets to those years.
Yeah. Irish Journalist of the Year, Aoife Moore, as I always have on this podcast, is a wonderful experience. And delighted that you've said to come back on, and that we have signed you up to an exclusive deal where you'll only be coming on this podcast for the next 3 years, and obviously the syndication of your book, and we get to actually reveal your future scoops before the examiner. Jesus Christ, that'll tell you where my head's gone to. I've made a bollocks to that, so I'm not going to continue it. Look, Aoife,
thank you. Get mini eggs, Danny.
Thank you so much.
Man, did I get mini eggs? I got 2 packets for €3. I'm buzzing.
Mini eggs are
I love a mini egg.
Mini eggs are, and you know what? Like I said this to Mero earlier, I think one of the reasons I love them so much is because they're only available for that little window during the year. They feel like an actual
you can't
treat,
get sick of them.
Yeah. You just want to get a box.
I'm normally a big advocate for chocolate going in the fridge or even into the freezer on occasion.
No.
Don't put
many eggs get too hard, they're too dense, they can't be kept in the fridge.
Yeah, you'll crack your tooth. It's not worth it.
Not in the fridge chocolate.
That's my public safety announcement for today. Do not put mini eggs in the fridge. Mini eggs.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Annie, do you want to close us out? Where can anyone listen to us?
People can listen to this 2-time award-winning audio presentation called What's the Story Podcast. They can get it on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Podcast Republic. Anywhere and everywhere the word podcast appears, if you put the letters WTS pod beside it, me and Mero will pop up smiling at you and welcome you to what is 255 plus episodes of this audio sensation.
Excellent. Aoife Grace Moore, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, boys.
Thanks, Aoife.
There is.
Bullards.
That news.